Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Roberts, and as always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Roberts. And here on the Maroon Friday edition of the Yard, I don't have a maroon today. Wearing all black, got the Kiss Destroyer shirt on, some new black shorts the wife got me for my birthday, Chuck Taylor's. Not Maroon Friday for me. But I promise you I will be in game-ready shape soon. I guess I could have put on a maroon shirt today, but I didn't. But we will be celebrating Maroon Friday every Friday during football season. And it's great that we live in a country we can celebrate Maroon Friday as we choose. They haven't taken that right away from us yet. Not to get too political. But nevertheless, hope it's a great day for you. Hope it's payday for you. Hope you get out and go do some cool things. Is there anything better than payday? I mean, your birthday's great, but sometimes that's not... You know what I mean? I don't like people making a big fuss over me. Maybe you do. I don't. But payday's a good day, right? Because there's always some nagging things you need to take care of, and I'll give you guys a bit of an update, too, on the business. I'm opening a business with my wife and close to finalizing a real estate deal on that. And so we'll have a location and we'll have some social media push about that in the weeks to come. It's been a long process, longer than I hoped. But all that said, we're close. And went and looked at a space today, and we thought we were close on another one, didn't work out. It's okay. Life moves on. But nevertheless, we're close. So I'll share that with you soon. Again, that's True Rest. It's a float spa therapy place, and I got a couple people that have contacted me because they're interested in perhaps bringing this wonderful franchise to their neck of the woods. I'm happy to say that the very first one in the state of Mississippi is going to be in Stark Vegas. How about that? We're making Starkville a better place, man. I'm not just a Mississippi State guy, right? I was. Then I moved to Starkville full time, and I love it here. I do. And like when people talk negatively about Starkville, it does bother me. But a lot of times I understand that that's out of ignorance, right? I mean, it's kind of like, would you trust me to give you, traveling tips for Las Vegas, and I've never been? That's true. I've never been to Vegas. Maybe you've been. I'd love to go and take some of their money at the blackjack table. But all that said, I've never been to Vegas. So a lot of these people that have these negative opinions of Starkville, either they've never been and they've just jumped aboard this collective think tank type approach, or they've come here for like one game. They just happen to be passing through. And Starkville is a convenient punching bag for a lot of people. I'll tell you, the very first time I covered at Auburn, I told Mark Murphy, I said, I'm not going to listen to any more shots about Starkville. Because Auburn, Alabama is out here in the middle of nowhere. Auburn's just a bigger version of Starkville. And I love going to Auburn. I do. Love that fan base. I do. I know many of you don't. I do. They're kind of our kissing cousins across the state line. But all that said, I love it here. I do. I love the people here. And Mississippi State is a wonderful, wonderful place to go to school, a wonderful place to work, a wonderful place to be affiliated with. But I tell you this, the people of Starkville are outstanding. That's one of the things I tell you. I won't tell you who because I don't want to embarrass them. But, I spoke to somebody, one of our, let's just say somebody that has spent some time in Starkville. Let's say that. And they said, I didn't realize the people in my hometown were as unfriendly as they were until I came to Starkville, Mississippi. And I thought, is this typical? And the truth of the matter, it is. It's a great place to raise a family. It is. And the Chamber of Commerce isn't paying me to say this, and I don't want too many of you to move here, right? Because I don't want to have to wait for a table at my favorite restaurants and things like that. But all that said, man, it is a great place to live and a great place to raise a family. So if you're thinking about moving your family to Golden Triangle, think about Starkville. And real estate's a little bit pricier here, but it's so worth it, man. It's so worth it to me. I love being here. I absolutely do. And I'm here until she puts me in the nursing home. And if she does do that, I hope it's a nursing home here in Starkville. I hope I never have to do that. But I'm home, man. I'm home. And there have been so many people in the past that, when I was coming up the ranks, I worked for Fox Sports for a while and had some other opportunities. There's some people that popped up and said, hey, would you be willing to do this? I lived in Baton Rouge 16 years, and I figured that was enough time in the mission field. It was time to come home. And I I just tell you, man, I love being here. I love the people. I love being as close to Mississippi State. I love how the city really gets behind the university, especially on game day weekends, and welcomes you guys back to town. But, when I've had other opportunities in the past, the thing I've always thought about is, number one, how much more travel is it going to be? Because I do a ton of that now. But also, too, what does it require me to do? How much am I going to be away from Starkville? And when my wife and I made the decision to move up here, to me it was like, hey, this is going to be a cool thing. And I remember selling my girls on the idea of going to Starkville High School. I was like, you know what? We're going to be really good in football. We're going to be really good in basketball. You're going to get a chance to see your classmates compete for state championships. And, of course, they did. They got to see the Starkville Yellow Jacket ladies win a state championship. They got to see the football team win multiple state championships. And that's a really cool thing. And so if you're thinking about it, get off the fence, man. Come up here and be a Starkvillian like the rest of us. But I think about that so much when I go back to the Justin Parker interview. When I interviewed him, there were a lot of things I did my due diligence and kind of found out prior to him taking the job. He's a small town guy. And so when the idea of Mark Kingston taking the job at Miami popped up, there were a lot of people in college baseball circles who said, hey, he's not willing to go to Miami. He really don't want to take his family down there. He and his wife have a young son, and I've joked with him, the next one needs to be called Duty Noble. But I digress. But that's one thing he talked about when he came here. He said when we visited here outside of baseball and got to see the town and got to meet people and got to spend some time with the baseball staff, Starkville fit them to a T. And so there are a lot of people out there that maybe Starkville doesn't fit. Maybe you're a big city girl or guy. I don't know. I can tell you I'm glad that I've had those experiences in life, but I much prefer this. I grew up in Columbia, Mississippi. I could not wait to get out of Mississippi. Couldn't wait. Then I went out and spent some time, traveled around the country, lived in other parts of the South, had a great time, but I was ready to get back. And I thought to myself, as my kids grew up in Baton Rouge, when we moved here, I thought, I'm glad they're going to get the opportunity to know what it's like to live in small-town Mississippi. Even though Mississippi State and Starkville is not typical small-town Mississippi, there is just a core value system here that I think is difficult to beat. And I'm glad that my children had the opportunity to know what it was like to spend some time here and grow up here, and now Starkville's home. And proud to say that I got 3 Starkville High School Yellow Jacket alums in our family. So there you go. Wasn't planning to have this TED Talk with you about the greater parts of Starkville, but here we are. Nevertheless, I love it here. I absolutely do. And nobody's paying me to say that. It's just my free endorsement of the place that we choose to call home. We could live anywhere. We have proven that, But we love it here, and I plan to be here until the end. Let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company. They're in Starkville, too. Maybe you've heard. The genesis of that great hamburger empire right here on University Drive in Starkville. I love Bulldog Burger Company, and one of the main reasons why is I know what to expect. I know it's going to be a quality experience. I know I'm going to get great food. I'm going to get great service at a great price in a great, very, very attractive location. It doesn't matter which of the 3 I choose, whether it be University Drive here, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, or Lake Harbor Drive in the Ridge and Flowwood area. There's a consistency with service. And that's one of the things that so many people, they kind of favor the national chains because, hey, I know what I'm going to get. I kind of avoid local places. I'm not of that sort. But you know what? You're going to get small town service, but you're going to get big town consistency when it comes to Bulldog Burger Company. Go by, have a great restaurant quality hamburger. Get the spring rolls as your appetizer. They will make you better looking. And get that chocolate shake to go. I'm still on that Nutella kick. I love it. I absolutely love getting that Nutella shake to go. Because I like a little palate cleanser. I don't know how you guys are when you have your meals, but I got to have a little something sweet. I just do. And I get that chocolate shake, and I drink it on the way home. And if I don't finish it, I put it in the fridge and have it with my breakfast. Because I'm about that life. You should be about the Bulldog Burger Company life, too. It is a place where people go to meet. MEAT, Bulldog Burger Company. All right, let's jump into a couple things. The NCAA transfer portal has closed for spring sport athletes. Now, that doesn't mean that people can't still go in the portal. However, they will not be able to be eligible to play this coming year. That make sense? So anybody that plans to play next year and use their one-time transfer exception had to be in by yesterday. There was one final diamond dog that slipped in under the fence before they closed the portal, and that's Hollis Porter. He did not play in his 2 years here in the program. We wish him the absolute best. Related to Trey Porter, former designated hitter here at Mississippi State, a product of East Central High School, same place that Brad Cumbus went to school. We think a lot of him, but it didn't work out, and that's okay. It's not everybody's fault. Again, you get a short time in life to play ball. You got to be somewhere you can get on the field. And so we wish Hollis the best. And so give you a quick update. It's like when you look at all this, and like I wrote an article about this earlier, and people are like, you know what? Hey, this is probably a best case scenario for us. I would argue that's probably the case. Probably could have seen one or two more guys go. But Lane Forsythe, of course, goes into the portal. Your former starting shortstop. And I've got nothing negative to say about Lane. We don't win the national championship without Lane in 2021. Of course, he made the All-College World Series team. We appreciate it. It didn't work out last year. I don't know if he got the yips or whatever, if it got in his head, but he was not the same defensive shortstop last year. Sometimes offensively, he was hitting the baseball as well as he had at any point in his career. But at the end of the day, he lost a starting job, goes in the portal. He's now headed to Oklahoma State. Wish Lane the best in his final year of college eligibility. Graham Eintema was a guy that we took out of junior college, and in the fall last year, he was outstanding. And against a lineup, Bulldog lineup that proved to be pretty good offensively, Eintema was really good. But once we got into the season, things just didn't work out. He had that great start against Arizona State, had a little first inning trouble there. But after he beat Arizona State, we thought, okay, maybe we got something here. Maybe we're good. And it never really kind of came together, and we got into SEC play, and he was basically just doing bad practice sometimes. He is now headed to Mercer, and perhaps that's a place that he can play and contribute. Again, it didn't work out here, but we wish no ill will on Graham Eintema, and appreciate his contributions to Mississippi State, as limited as they may be in the short time he was here. But he is now headed to Mercer, so he's found somewhere to play. We had a pair of freshman catchers go in the portal, Bryce Hubbard and Ryan Williams. Of course, he had three catchers, and we discussed some of that on Wednesday, how we had gotten a little out of balance at the catcher position by signing three in one class. And, of course, when one of those guys wins a job, then the other two guys are like, you know what, I'm not going to waste another year of eligibility here. Ryan Williams, of course, didn't play last year, so he could take a red shirt. He still has 4 years of eligibility to play. Bryce Hubbard did play a little bit and was a guy that could swing it a little bit. Defensively, he was behind Ross, but was a guy that had a pretty good bat. But those two are still in the portal, have not announced destinations yet. Again, we wish them the best. Von Siebert, a guy that's been here for a while. He saw his options really limited last year. He did have a lot of at-bats for us during the 2022 season. He was kind of our left-handed pinch hitter of choice. And at times came through. Had some big hits at times, but this year just not nearly as many opportunities. And he is now in the portal. I have heard that he may be headed to Delta State. He has not released that I've seen. I checked again yesterday. But he may be headed to Delta State. And, again, we wish Von the best. This is a guy that was a product of the Mississippi junior college system. Had a really good career in junior college, but it just never kind of came together here. And he's a bit of a top-handed hitter, too. That's one of those things, too. When you get into the SEC, hitting mechanics really means something. And I think Von's a guy that it was basically a singles hitter here, by and large. But just never really found a chance to break into the starting lineup. And with Hunter Hines at first base, he's not going to play out there. It's just not. And not consistent enough to be our designated hitter. Of course, last year we were kind of left-handed heavy. But, again, wish Von the best. A great young man. Had a chance to talk to him a few times. And a guy that was really proud to be here. And, again, it didn't work out. It's not always somebody's fault. We wish Von the best, whether it be Delta State or somewhere else. Slade Alford, of course, announced weeks ago, headed to the University of Georgia. And excited, for Slate to get another chance, I'll tell you, Slate has kind of been beaten up at times by our fans, and some of that is warranted, right? And let's just kind of call it for what it is. I mean, he did have some defensive lapses last year, and if I remember the numbers, it's been a while since I looked at all this. I think Slate Alford was probably, let me think the best way to say this. I think as far as failed double plays turned, right, double play opportunities, I think he was a part of the most of those, where we had opportunities to turn double plays and were unsuccessful in doing so, whether it be a 5-4-3 or whatever. There were multiple situations where you have a chance to get out of a potential big inning. We weren't able to do that, and Slate was a part of that. And maybe the change of scenery will do him good. This is a guy that's got some talent, and at times struggles to hit that inside pitch. I mean, it's a little, sometimes people can get in his kitchen a little bit, but when he's able to connect and have a really solid point of contact, he's a guy that's real flashy. It really, really is. As you guys know, he hit a ton of home runs last summer, and we thought he was going to take over and be the guy. And talking to some of our players, back in 2021, they were telling me Slate Alford was our best defensive third baseman on the team, that the bat just needed to come along. And so last year, we're like, hey, look at this big summer he's putting up at the plate. You couple that with, his defense, we really have something here. And again, it didn't work out. It didn't work out. And again, wish Slate the best as he kind of moves forward. But we had to make some changes when it came to our lineup. And I don't think you could guarantee Slate a starting spot. I mean, would that be fair to everybody else? I'd say no. So you had to bring in some competition at third. And so he's kind of now moved on to. And Georgia out there really working the portal wire hard, especially with SEC players. There'll be a different look at Georgia with Wes Johnson. Scott Strickland was always – Scott Strickland – and maybe it's because he kind of told an obscurity at Georgia, because Georgia was just kind of a mid-level program within the conference much of the last several years. But Scott Strickland was a great pitching coach too. Is he on the level of Wes Johnson? Perhaps not. But Scott Strickland was a guy that always had pitchers. So I don't know that you see a big jump with the Georgia Bulldogs. I'm sure in the non-conference they'll schedule light to get their legs on them a little bit. And people are like, hey, here comes Georgia and Wes Johnson. I don't think Georgia is going to suddenly become a recruiting destination. There may be some guys out there, obviously, that want to go pitch for Wes, especially out of the transfer portal after the success he had with Paul Skeens. But let me tell you, we're not going to see a guy like Paul Skeens for a long time. People like and harken back to the days of Ben McDonald. Man, think about how long that's been. Was he first pick in the draft in 90, 91, 89? I don't know. Nevertheless, that's how long it's been, since you started drawing some comparisons to Skeens. But that said, you don't have to be Paul Skeens to have a big career. So I think Wes will do a good job courting pitchers out there. I just don't think that you're going to see Georgia rise in the ranks of the SEC without a bigger financial commitment from the university. And now, of course, first baseman, outfielder Hollis Porter is in. So that's 7 guys that went in for state, and 3 of those 7 have now announced their destination. And again, Siebert may be headed to Delta State. And so to date, hey, Bulldog fans, have you considered maybe signing up for one of these meal kit delivery services? I bet you have. And you probably thought, you know what, I don't know if it'll work for me. Well, it will. Our friends at HelloFresh are the official partner of the Boneyard when it comes to meal kits. Here's the deal. You get farm-fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your door. You can skip all those trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Here's the deal, too. It's so cool. HelloFresh Market has new snacks, meals, and more to add to your weekly order than ever, like their fun s'mores bundles for the kids. That'll be popular. You wanted something a little more technical, maybe off the beaten path? HelloFresh makes entertaining easy with a selection of crowd-pleasing eats like their bratwurst bar with caramelized onions, Dijonnaise slaw and pineapple relish, or even a snack board with pretzel bites, spice bar nuts, and even hot honey peach jam. Doesn't that sound appetizing? Go to HelloFresh.com/Boneyard16, the number 16. That's HelloFresh.com/Boneyard16. And you know what? You get 16 free meals plus free shipping. How cool is that? Going to make it easier than ever so you have HelloFresh delivered right to your door. Bulldogs have 4 transfer ins. That's not counting the fact that we added Gavin Black from the junior college ranks as a right-handed pitcher, and then we also just offered Stephen, can't even pronounce my own name, Stephen Spalletti. So we've had 2 commitments from the high school and junior college ranks to go with these transfers. We're not done in the portal, but we did get a big get since the time that we have discussed Mississippi State athletics together, and that's right-handed pitcher Carson Ligon from Miami. Carson is a guy that was the regular Friday night guy at Miami, had some stiffness late last year, middle of the year, kind of limited him a little bit. But he was a guy from Riverview High School there in Sarasota, Florida, that was their guy. He was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Threw a no-hitter in high school, did a great job. And a guy that's majoring in accounting, so we can accommodate that. But in 2022, as a true freshman, he made 15 starts, 16 appearances. His first one came in relief, and the next thing you know, he's starting and actually moved to the weekend and pitched in ACC play. And we know ACC is the second best baseball conference in America. So it's not like he's, playing at a, oversized junior college. I mean, he's playing Power 5 baseball. And was not their ace that year, but became a proven and dependable weekend guy. Became the Friday night guy in 2023. And looking at the numbers here, and again, people are like, oh, well, look at the number. He's 9-8, Steve. Well, that's the win-loss record is basically a team statistic. There are a few things that I've learned about him. Of course, I've got some connections with some major league scouts. The main thing is we've got to do is keep people off the fastball with him. He is a guy that, mechanically by his own admission, has never, ever, ever had anything to do analytically. Like, he's never had a chance to pitch in a pitching lab or anything like that. And so we've got an opportunity to kind of fine-tune some things with him. He's just kind of getting by on guts and talent right now. And, J.D. Artigue at Miami, one of the best pitching coaches in the country. So he's got a good foundation to work with. But Carson with a K, by the way. And I told him, I said, the irony of that is not lost on me. But just 10 games in 2023, goes 3-2 with a 4.80 ERA, 10 total appearances, all 10 of them starts, 50.2 innings pitched. And even though he just pitched in 10 games, he was among the team leaders in innings pitched. So he does have the ability to be a bit of a workhorse. But 44 hits, it's just under a hit per inning. And then 20 walks to, let me look at, it's a crazy thing sometimes looking at these numbers. 20 walks, and then looking at the strikeout numbers here, 37. So not a lot of swing and miss. You'd like that. I mean, less than a strikeout per inning. And it's tough in Power 5 baseball to average more than that. But that's where I think Justin Parker comes in. You take a guy like him that's got Power 5 experience, on the weekends, and you fine-tune the craft just a little bit. But, looking at the game-by-game stuff, I mean, he's just, again, things just changed for him when he had a little bit of tightness. So, we'll kind of see how things progress there. But is he a Friday night guy for us? I don't know that I would go that far. I think he is a weekend guy for us. Is he a Saturday guy? Is he a Sunday guy? I think if, based on what we have coming back, you feel pretty confident that he is going to be on the weekend. And that's what he was recruited to do. And that's where we have the biggest needs. But, what does that mean, Bradley Lofton? What does that mean for Durangelo? Right? And we still need a bona fide Friday night guy. We still. And, maybe Ligon can be the guy, or Ligon. I don't know exactly sure how to pronounce it, to be quite honest with you. But we'll call him Carson. His mama named him Carson. We're going to call him Carson. But, he's a guy that can be a dude. And he was a guy, obviously, that, the age is a factor. He was a 19-year-old freshman. And 20 last year. So this will be his only year at Mississippi State. But 6-6 as a freshman, 3-2 as the sophomore. But it's kind of working through all this. It's just one of those things you look at and you begin to ask yourself, where does he fit? I'll take these Power 5 weekend starters with a little scratch and dent to them and trust the fact that I've got an elite pitching coach that can kind of get them where we need them to be, as if that makes sense. But again, I like to get, but we need to get Luke Holman. Chase Burns is a guy that we have been on, and I understand he was set to visit Auburn and Mississippi State, canceled those visits and announced a commitment to Wake Forest. I don't know if that's completely over or not, But I'll tell you this, that the final two, from what I understand, were Wake Forest and Georgia, that he wanted to go to pitch for either Corey Muscara and Wes Johnson. And when you've got guys like that have 1 year to get it right before they go pro, they're going to opt for a guy that has a track record of developing big-time pitchers. And that's where I think Justin Parker is on the way to being. But I think if he can get a guy like Carson to maximize his potential, I think next year then you kind of become that destination type program when it comes to pitching. But Chase Burns, right now it seems like we were in the mix, but it's clear that we were not among the top 2 or 3. And I think a lot of that too is the uncertainty. And you had 2 back-to-back, subpar years. You change a pitching coach, and are you willing to gamble your career on that? Right? If you're one of those guys out there that you got this 1 year to get it right, are you willing to gamble with a first-year head coach or a first-year pitching coach? Maybe not. But when you look at the fact that Wake Forest obviously was the number 1 team in the country second half of the year, and Corey Muscara was the pitching coach there, then LSU was the first part of the year, and then the ultimate national champion. Well, Wes Johnson was a big part behind that. And so you look at that. I mean, Ty Floyd against a guy that was a consistent performer for LSU, didn't always work deep into ball games, ends up being a second-round draft pick. Riley Cooper is a guy that if he ever really commits himself to physical fitness, could really be something. It's a bigger guy that can change speeds a little bit. And again, Wes Johnson kind of got the best out of him. So it kind of makes sense that Chase Burns would pick one of those schools. But we would prefer it to have been ours. I think a lot of people thought it would be us and LSU, and it ends up being Wake Forest and Georgia's final 2. So we'll kind of move forward with that. But kind of what's left for Mississippi State, we're still in on Luke Holman, former Alabama Friday night guy. That looks to be a state LSU-Tennessee battle. I understand he will visit all 3 schools before making a decision. One of the things that Carson told me, and this is a guy I remember, he's pitched 2 years in the ACC, so he's done the home and away thing with just about every school in that conference, and he took some visits. Florida State and Mississippi State were his final 2. This is a kid from Florida that picked Mississippi State over the home state school. And he said when he came here, met Justin Parker, they hit it off. But when he saw the pitching lab and the commitment to development of pitchers, that's kind of what won him over. He goes, everywhere that I went on my visit, I thought, hey, this could be a good place. And South Carolina was one of them. He goes, every time I left the school, I said, you know what? I could see myself going there. And he goes, but after I left Mississippi State, I said, you know what? That's where I'm going. And so we're able to break that news for you yesterday, and happy to do so. But that's the big thing with us. We got to get guys on campus. And everybody that I've talked to, like even Johnny Long at Pittsburgh, he was talking about how excited he was to play at Dudy Noble Field. And I said, what's the kind of the consensus outside of the conference? He goes, everybody in college baseball knows about Dudy Noble Field. And everybody would love the opportunity to play there in some respects, whether it be as a visiting player or whatever. And what's interesting is Long talked about, DiGiacomo, the LSU outfielder that ended up transferring. He said DiGiacomo told him the best place in the country was to play at Dudy Noble Field because of the fans and the amenities and the environment. And so that's the big thing for us. It kind of goes back to the first segment of the show. There's a lot of people that have this negative opinion of Starkville. And, we kind of excuse that. But the reality of it is that among college baseball circles, people say, you know what, Mississippi State and Starkville is a destination-type school. So we got to get those guys on campus and kind of show them, hey, we are more committed to you and to your development, the enhancement of your skill than anybody else. So Holman's a guy, again, we're watching. Mason Molina from Texas Tech was a guy that we've been on a little bit. I was told the day that he went into the portal, he was headed to Arkansas. And then the next day I talked to that same source and said, I think he's going to work through the process a little bit and take some trips. And then now I'm hearing, it looks like it's going to be Arkansas. So sometimes, the first thing you hear is correct. Maybe not the case in coaching searches, but the reality of it is that when it comes to recruiting, sometimes these portal deals are already done before they actually go in the portal. And, of course, State was on Chase Burns. And there's a couple other guys out there that, we're chasing a little bit, doing our due diligence on. I think that's a big part of it, too. And that's one of the things you start thinking about, too, is if we can just get guys here and kind of show them what we're about and let them see it all up close and see all the behind the scenes piece, that's interesting. That's interesting, too. But a couple other names just to kind of remember. John West from Boston College. That's a guy that, he's had some success too in the Power 5 level. That's a guy you look at. And then left-handed pitcher Greg Ferrone from Louisville recently went in the portal. And, he's a guy that we've got a relationship with. So there'll be some other arms. And again, I think you're going to see 2 to 3 more arms. Of course, with Aaron Nixon going undrafted, that kind of gives you some flexibility. You can be a little bit picky. You don't have to go get a closer, and you start thinking about Nate and Nixon. You start feeling good about that back end, and hopefully Gavin Black can come in here and be a piece for us. Cam Schulke is a guy that's going to be, we expect him to be a quality middle relief guy for us. I'm eager to see him this fall. But you need to get some starting pitching. And again, you say, well, Steve, we got Lofton and we have Durangelo. We absolutely do. And that may end up being your rotation. Maybe it's Carson, Lofton, and Durangelo. But you got to go out there and get some competition for those guys, because competition makes everybody better. But I think you've got to go get some other arms, whether they be starting pitchers or ultimately become relievers. But I think you feel good about Carson. I think you got to get one more. I think you have to get one more weekend starter, and then probably a bullpen piece, whether it be a long relief thing. I mean, Tyler Davis is a guy that they call him TD, but he was a guy that was phenomenal at VCU and was very hit and miss here. But he did have some performances that you look back and say, wow, holy smokes, that was great. And then the next time you trot him out there, and it's like he can't find the zone, or he's not missing bats. So you don't want to repeat that, but you've got to go get a guy that maybe has that type of experience in college. A guy that maybe has been a part-time starter and a reliever. So, again, I think two more arms. And then, of course, if you can get Braden Montgomery. And I've had some conversations here as of late. The reports are kind of all over the place. You speak to some people and say, oh, yeah, the word is he's going to Mississippi State. And other people say, well, he's working through the process. I think both of those things could prove ultimately to be true when it's all said and done. I'm cautiously optimistic about where State stands at Braden Montgomery, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh, he's coming to State. I have seen a lot of people that have come out and made it seem like this is a done deal. It is not a done deal. It's not a done deal. I want to make sure you understand that. And Chase Burns and Montgomery have talked about playing together. Now Burns is headed to Wake Forest. You begin to wonder, hey, is that an option for him? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't match up with anything we've heard about Montgomery in recent weeks, but it's recruiting. It's the NIL era. It's the transfer portal. And so things change from time to time. So, again, I'm cautiously optimistic about Braden, but I'm not going to sit here today and tell you, yes, I believe he's coming to Mississippi State. I think State's the team to beat, but, when these agents get involved and NIL numbers get thrown around, things change. I'm not trying to prepare you for disappointment. I'm not trying to suggest that Mississippi State's not doing a good job. I'm just telling you this remains a very fluid situation. And so if somebody comes out and says, oh, he's definitely going to State, I think they're just kind of being a little bit optimistic there. Not to say he's not coming, but I'm just telling you he's working through this process. All right, speaking of working through the process, guys, did you know about this new thing? Maybe you guys are familiar with this. I traded some emails with our great friend, the lovely and talented Blair Chandler. Traded some emails with him yesterday. We had a conversation about this recently, and I forgot, to be quite honest with you. Forgot about it. And he pointed this out to me. There is this new law that now allows people at the age of 18 to purchase a home, provided they have a parent to co-sign. That is super cool. And so you start thinking about a condominium. So, and rather than throw your money away, let's say your kid's headed to State, well, why not buy a condo? Or why not buy a house? And so instead of throwing 4 years or 5 years of rent away, you're investing in a property here in Starkville. And so when your youngster leaves with their college degree, either they already have a home they can pick up the payments on, or you can sell it and recoup your equity. That is a great deal. I mean, it really is. And so Blair can explain all the particulars behind every bit of that. I wanted to make sure that you were aware of that, because especially in college towns, that means a lot. Whether it be Oxford or Starkville or Hattiesburg or wherever, if you have the opportunity to invest in the community and then recoup some of your investment when your time is up there, that just makes too much sense to me. So instead of renting, maybe look at buying. And maybe when they leave, you say, you know what, I'm just going to keep making these payments, and we'll just have a place in Starkville. We'll just have a place to go up there for our ball game weekend retreat. Or again, you can just sell it to the next people to come along, right? There's options for you. Reach out to Blair at 601-500-2344. Again, 601-500-2344. And big deal, too. He told me, hey, man, I closed a Boneyard deal last month, and I'm closing one tomorrow, which is today. So, we've made it worth Blair's while, right, to be a part of this. Maybe you've got a business and think, you know what, Steve? I've always considered advertising on the Boneyard. With Portico out and that place now completely sold, we have an opportunity for you. So reach out to me on social media. I can give you the particulars there. But if you want to talk to Blair, again, that's 601-500-2344. And visit him at closewithblair.com. C-L-O-S-E with Blair, B-L-A-I-R.com. All right. I put out the bat signal for Slipknot fans, and you responded. You did. Had probably a dozen messages on Facebook and probably nearly that amount on Twitter, and had a couple tweets about it too. Like, yeah, Steve, we need a Slipknot list. We've been waiting for one, and I think some of you guys are just kind of waiting to see if I'm legit or not. You're like, yeah, Steve knows Eddie's metal, but does he know Slipknot? Does he truly know Corey Taylor? And you know what? I may not know him as well as you know him. And I was kind of late to the party. I admit it. But I love Slipknot. And some of these songs are on my regular travel list. And I'll just ride down the highway, man, and grit my teeth and just hate. I just put on Slipknot and get me a caffeinated beverage and just roll along there and just sit there and just ready to explode, man. Slipknot is not for the faint of heart. I'm just going to tell you that right out of the gate. There's 9 guys in this band. I've never seen them live, but I've got a friend of mine that goes every time they're in a reasonable driving distance. And he likens it to a modern-day Alice Cooper show. He said there's just so much going on, whether you know the catalog or not, you can't miss it. And so the next time they come through, I'm going to try to get tickets and go. Now, Des Moines, Iowa is the home of Slipknot, and it's kind of like a super group from the Des Moines, Iowa area, which just seems to be a weird place for a heavy metal group to come together. I don't even know if you can call them metal, but they're certainly in your face. But basically, Clown is the last original member of this band. But they pulled a guy from here and this band or whatever. So again, it's kind of a super group, and then they began to make some racket. But things really took off when Corey Taylor became the lead singer. And the theatrical stuff that goes, if you watch these videos, it's like something like out of a nightmare. I mean, you watch, and I don't mean like gore, macabre, but like one of those things that, like you watch stuff on TV and you have a dream and it's like there's this distortion in your mind. That's kind of how a Slipknot thing is. Everybody's got these masks on. It's crazy. But here are my top 10. I guess before I get to that, let me give you a couple that didn't make the list because I know that I'm going to have some people reach out to me and say, Steve, you missed this one. And you know what? You're probably right. Because the Slipknot catalog is so expansive. We could probably do a top 20. It'd still not do it justice. Fair enough? Because I think right now when you think about the following Slipknot has, it kind of reminds me, as an older guy, of when Metallica kind of got going and you see the following they had today. I think Slipknot is on a similar trajectory. Will they be as meaningful to rock music as Metallica? I'm not suggesting that. But the fans that are fans of Slipknot are very, very passionate about it. It's not like, well, that's just a band that I like. These people are all in. I respect it. I do. I absolutely love it. But the 3 honorable mentions, Custer, Spit It Out, and Kill Pop. That's your honorable mentions. Those did not make the list. And some of you are going to say, Steve, how did Custer not make the list? It was close. But again, it's my list. All right, number 10 for me is Sulfur. And that may be a little bit low for many of you. And what I like about it is it's kind of got this Black Sabbath vibe in the intro. Like when it first comes in, you can kind of hear that there's some influence from Tommy Iommi there in the guitar. And then it kicks in, and it's just a great rock and roll song from start to finish. Number 9, one that is obnoxious. I'll just tell you, it is. It's very much in your face. There's not much out there like it. It's Vermilion. And there's actually 2 parts to this. There's a different mix. It's Vermilion Part 2. I'm going with the original Vermilion. And then you can kind of, maybe Roy will put Part 2 on our list for us as well. It's different. It's very different. But Vermilion is another one of those songs, too, that got a ton of play on Octane. I think it was really instrumental in really helping grow the fan base. Number 8, this is the closest thing to a ballad you're ever going to get from Slipknot. And it's the song Snuff. And I dig it. I think you will, too. And it's really one of those songs that really kind of pulled me in because it showed me they had a little more diversity than I thought. It's true to the Slipknot sound. It's just a much different tempo. And it's a very, very heartfelt song in many respects. Number 7, this is a little more commercial, and a lot of people wouldn't have put this in their top 10 because a lot of people didn't like this song. They said it was a little bit of a sellout. I love it. And maybe it's because I'm a sellout. I don't know. But it's the great track, Dead Memories. It's very melodic. It's a little more mainstream than a lot of the stuff they've done. And, of course, it was a hit. And, again, I think it's one of those things that kind of pulled people in. I think there are a lot of people out there. It's like, there's this guy out there with this crazy mask on. It's like something from a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I don't know what's happening on stage. It's just too much racket for me. And then they hear Dead Memories, and you're like, hey, well, these guys have a little more substance than I thought. I dig it a lot. Number 6, kind of going back a few years. Man, I tell you, this is probably one of the first 5 songs I heard when I got my SiriusXM subscription. It's Wait and Bleed. Oh, my gosh, it's such a great song. Wait and Bleed. And you say, Steve, there's all this macabre stuff. Well, they're a different band. They're a little darker. They're not satanic or anything. And Corey, of course, has got it's in recovery, so they're a little more positive. But he gets out there and he plays a character. So Wait and Bleed, number 6. All right, number 5 on our list, a song, it kind of got a little bit overplayed, to be honest with you. And if you love it, you'd think, well, it's never overplayed. Listen, I'm a Motley Crue guy to my core, but I wish that the radio stations played more than 3 songs. That's kind of how I felt about this one. But I do love it. I love the guitar. I love how aggressive it is right out of the gate. It's Duality at number 5. Duality. Great track. Number 4, I say this is more recent because, like, the scope of time when you get to be my age is much broader. And I'll say, you remember like last year, and it's like 10 years ago? This one is fairly recent, but it was released a few years ago. But it's one that was also a huge hit for them. It's The Devil and I. And it's one of these songs, so you hear that and you think, oh, Steve, I don't know. Trust me. It's a great track. Number 3, again, going back a few years, it's Before I Forget, which is something I have to worry about more and more in my advanced age. But Before I Forget, a great track. Now, you're probably thinking my number 2 song would probably not be your number 2 song. And I'm perfectly okay with that because I think with a band like Slipknot, I think it's one of those things because of the length of their time, there are songs that hit you at different points in your life that kind of make you a little bit biased in their direction. And when this song came out, I nearly got this tattooed across my stomach. And I still may, don't put it past me. Don't even trip. I love this song. It's a percussive song. Clown came up with the idea, and to me, it is one of the best Slipknot songs of the last decade. I absolutely love this track. It's Nero Forte, which to its translation is Black Black. And, it talks about, in the chorus, basically about you're the kind of person that, like, always trying to cause me problems. That's what you do best. That's what you do best. And that's kind of what the song is about. It is aggressive, but I tell you what, it's one of those songs when you put it in the car and you just crank it. Like, you don't listen to this at normal volume. If people are talking, you got to make them be quiet. And the best way to do that is to turn that knob. But I don't let people talk when this song comes on. And if we're talking, I'll just pause it. Because I want to hear this, the sonic sound of this, the majesty of this wonderful rock song at full volume without any distraction. I don't know how you feel, but I've got some songs like that. You want to get sideways with me? Start talking during Nero Forte. Because you know what we're going to do when you're done blabbing? We're going to rewind it and listen to the thing in its entirety. That's what we're going to do if you're riding with me. But number 1, and you probably already know, it is the Slipknot song. This is the song I think that pulled so many people in from the very beginning. And people said, you know what? These guys are legit. And it's Psychosocial. And I remember years ago there was this kid, kind of a nerdy-looking kid, a little bit heavy-set guy. It was one of these videos that made the rounds on YouTube. Maybe one of you guys can send it to us again, and we'll all have a good time together. I hope the kid's doing well. But he goes to this high school talent show, and maybe a middle school, who knows. But you see this guy, and he looks like just a regular kid. He's a little bit plump, and dressed like a kind of a prep, whatever. And he's kind of got a little bit bushy hair, like he's a little bit unkept. And he goes in and he plugs in his radio, and he starts singing along to Psychosocial. And I lost it, man. When I saw that, I was like, man, there is hope for the new generation, man. That a kid like this would go out there to his middle school or his high school and just belt out Psychosocial. I love that kid. He's probably going to be president someday. I'll vote for him right now because he's better than any of the candidates that are in contention. Just going to say it right now. I'm all about rocking the White House. But Psychosocial, number one on the Slipknot list. And again, you hardcore Slipknot fans, I hope that you, number one, see that I am legit, but also, two, can appreciate the list today. There are some deeper cuts that maybe you would want on here, and that's okay. But I think, again, there's just such an incredible catalog here. I don't know how you could go wrong, to be honest with you. I think you could make a case for about 25 songs to be in the top 10. And again, so much of that kind of involves, where the song found you in your own life. So there you go, Slipknot top 10. I cannot believe we hadn't done this. It's like just the other day, I text Roy, have we done Stone Sour and Slipknot? He's like, no, neither. We're doing that. We're fixing it. And so we did. And if you haven't listened to the Corey Taylor solo album, I encourage you to do so. It's very different than other stuff he's done. It's very, very obnoxious and arrogant, and that's one of the things I love about him. And the fact that he's in recovery, and I can tell you, he does a lot of things behind the scenes for people in recovery. He is very much an advocate and does a lot of speaking when he has time about recovery. And recently there was a video that I saw where he did the SpongeBob SquarePants song and had the crowd sing along. You can find that out there if you're interested. But Corey Taylor is legit. He is an incredible songwriter and performer, but I have never met him, but I have some friends that have, and they share with me that it's kind of what you see is what you get. So when you see these interviews with him, it's not him being, fake or, disingenuous. He is a guy that is very much committed to recovery and has done some great things with his life in the years that he has been sober. And so we want to celebrate that. We want to celebrate the great music of Slipknot. If you have an idea for the top 10 list, reach out and let us know. I'll be glad to consider it. You can send it to us on social media. I'm on all forms of social media at Scout Steve R. If you're not following me on Twitter, what are you doing with your life? Instagram, I'm not on there a whole lot. A lot more personal stuff on there as of late. But nevertheless, all your Mississippi State news on my Twitter and Facebook, and of course at genespage.com. You can find Roy on Twitter, and Roy's not going to crowd your feed with pictures of his food. Right? That's important to understand. He's not going to do that. So if you follow Roy, all you're going to get is Mississippi State stuff, or you're going to get the Spotify list. And you can find Roy on Twitter and Spotify at Dogmatic67. That's DAWGMATIC 67. Be sure and give him a follow today. All right, final segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart, a Starkvillian institution. Man, they do a great job over there. I believe in buying local. I am a small business person myself. I support small business. Campus Bookmart is a small business that gives you big city service. They do. They're big time. That's what they do. If you're looking for Mississippi State merch, look no further than Campus Bookmart. You can find them neatly positioned on the backside of campus, swing in there, do your game day shopping, and then go to your tailgate or one of Mississippi State's historic venues. If you can't make it to town, or perhaps you live in a foreign land, like Louisiana or Tennessee, you can go to campusbookmart.net and use promo code BSR. That's exclusive for Boneyard listeners. That stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. That gets you free shipping on all orders over $75. Any order less than $75, absolutely incomplete. Outfit your family because college football season is going to be here before you know it. There's nothing more exciting when you're a kid than getting that sports jersey of your favorite player, or perhaps getting that new shirt. You know what I'm talking about. You know what it felt like when mom and dad walked in there and say, hey, I got you something special. Got you something to wear to game day. And you probably slept in it, right? Because you were so excited to have it. Mom, let's put some smiles on some faces today. Let's go to Campus Bookmart. Go to campusbookmart.net and order something. And get yourself something, too. We want you to look nice, right? We do. We support that. We do. Campusbookmart.net. Without a doubt, the best place to get Mississippi State merch. All right, now SEC Media Days is coming up next week. I'll be in Nashville, but I'm not going. Dave Murray is going to cover for us. I think Robbie's going. Dave Murray's going to go for us and cover all of the glad handing that goes on at SEC Media Days. I don't know who all will get a chance to vote, who all is going to hang around to vote. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I want to talk about some of the topics. One of the first things, Tennessee's probation came down today from the NCAA Committee on Infractions. I don't know if you're familiar with this. They did not get a postseason bowl ban, which probably shouldn't come as a big surprise because of the fact that they discovered the violation. But I will be honest with you, I would have hammered them. They did get hammered. I would have given them 1 year postseason bowl ban. I think back to the Ole Miss case, which was also especially egregious. They ended up getting 2 years. They self-imposed a year and got another. I think part of that's because they dug in their heels and said, come at me, bro. And Tennessee, completely different. That's everybody says, oh, you got to lawyer up and fight this. And you forget that they have a duty to cooperate because of the fact that they're part of a voluntary institution. That's important. So here's the deal. This Tennessee thing, Jeremy Pruitt gets a 6-year show cause, and then in the event that he is hired, he is suspended for a year. It's nuts. Here's a couple things from the decision. Over the course of 3 seasons, the Tennessee football program committed 18 Level 1 violations encompassing more than 200 individual infractions, most of which involve recruiting rules violations and direct payments to prospects, current student athletes, and their families, according to a decision released by the D1 Committee on Infractions panel. An additional 4 Level 1 unethical conduct violations occurred involving former university employees. Remember those Wendy's bags? I guess we should use Ward's bags. Could you get behind that? Ward's bags? I could. We should have a Ward's here in Starkville. The violations resulted in impermissible inducements and benefits totaling approximately $60,000. As a result, Tennessee failed to monitor its football program. Additionally, due to his personal involvement in violations, former football head coach violated head coach responsibility rules. All that's true. Every bit of it's true. And the deal is, what makes this different is, again, Tennessee uncovered it. They went through their own due diligence. They conducted an internal investigation, and they said, we got a problem here. And then they said, call the NCAA and says, dudes, we got to plead guilty to this. They didn't fight it. They just kind of dealt with the consequences and fired everybody that was involved here. And again, direct payments involved, including some from Jeremy Pruitt and his wife, Casey. That's interesting. That's just one of those things, too, you just never see. They did not get the dreaded lack of institutional control. But here are the penalties. And again, this was a negotiated resolution similar to what Mississippi State went through with Tutorgate. Again, a negotiated resolution. So here we go. Let's see here. 5 years probation for Tennessee football. A reduction in football scholarships by a total of 28. And that's got to be taken over the term probation. It's part of the deal. They already self-imposed some, which was 16. So they have a dozen more scholarships that they have to reduce in the coming years. A reduction in football official visits by 36 during the term probation. That is somewhat significant because young people now can take an unlimited amount of visits. They shall prohibit official visits in connection with a total of 10 regular season home games, 4 of which must be against SEC opponents. Because, we took our prohibition on visitors against FCS competition because kids weren't coming here anyway, which shows that we have a little bit of intelligence. They got to do it against 4 SEC teams. So that could be big, right? Let's see here. We talked about unofficial visits are also reduced. A total 28-week ban on recruiting communications during term probation, including at least 3 weeks per year. That's a big deal in some respects because they have to take one of those weeks in December and January. That's right there in the heart of recruiting. So right in the middle of all this, in the end, when you're chasing prospects and you're trying to stay on top of these guys and say, hey, we love you once you come to our school, there's a week prior to the December signing period and a week prior to the February signing period. Well, they will not be able to communicate with recruits. I think that's somewhat significant. A reduction of 120 evaluation days. That's the days that we go out as college coaches and have a chance to see people think during spring evaluation and fall football games. So all of a sudden, Alabama's coming to my game, but you're not. And then Alabama's contacting me every day and you can't. That could be an impediment to recruiting, for sure. A bunch of show causes were handed down, but one of the most significant things here, and this is, I think, what we're going to see a lot more from the NCAA, an $8 million fine. $8 million. And they said that basically encompasses what they estimate would have been the payout for bowl games for Tennessee for 23 and 24. $8 million. That is believed to be the biggest fine ever levied in the history of the NCAA. Now, what that does, I think, is it tries to make schools realize, hey, it's not worth it, right? Because they're not trying to punish players, they're trying to punish institutions. And so if you ban the university from going to a bowl game, the players can still go and enjoy the experience. However, because of this $8 million fine, the school itself and the football program do not profit from their ill-gotten gains. And so is that a step in the right direction? I think perhaps it could be. Because you're also punishing fans, right? It's one thing to punish donors that do stupid things. It's one thing to punish boosters that skirt the law. It's another thing to punish an entire fan base. And so those are the things that I look at and begin to think, okay, maybe this is the way to go. Now, the flip side of that is some would say, well, look at what happened at LSU basketball, which was a joke. It was. I don't think Will Wade got near enough. And if you want to punish administrators and coaches, that was a prime example to send a message. They elected not to do it. So some scholarship reductions, some visit reductions, some recruiting restrictions, and a huge fine. And I think this is what we're seeing from enforcement these days. I think that's kind of the, what we should expect kind of going forward. And so you start thinking, okay, if we're willing to go out here and do these things, is it worth it? Some would argue that it is. If you're not going to get the postseason ban, maybe you could make that case. I'm not ever one to advocate rule breaking, ever. I don't believe in cutting corners. I think you go out there and you outwork the next guy and then you get what you get. But I think what the NCAA has done with the light sanctions on LSU and many of the basketball programs affiliated with the Nike scandal, and now what they've done in Tennessee, may send a bit of a mixed message. And so I'm eager to see kind of how this unfolds moving forward. That will be, I think, a big topic at SEC Media Days. I know Josh Heupel had nothing to do with that. They put a quality product on the field last year, had a great season. And so, about a year ago, I think we all got to thinking, this, as bad as it sounds, the sanctions may not rise to the level that many people expect. Did they get hammered? Yes, they did. Did they avoid the bowl ban? And I think that's one of those things I look at and say, yeah, you allow the kids to play, but you hurt the school. But I don't think it hurts them on the recruiting trail in that respect. Yes, there are some restrictions that limit some of your actions. But at the same time, too, you still get the benefit to celebrate a big season. I would have liked to have seen a one-year bowl ban. That's just me. And I think a lot of this, you go back and look at the fact that Tennessee uncovered the violation and Tennessee went to the NCAA and said, hey, we got a problem. I think you have to give them some credit for that. Because the last thing you want is administrators and staffers out here, number one, skirting the rules and then working to cover that up. And so I think that's why they avoided the lack of institutional control and they mitigated the potential for a bowl ban. So it is what it is. It's done. But I think that's one of those things that is worthy of conversation. Especially now that you have NIL, why would you ever need to use improper inducements? And we could argue that the way that some of these collectives are being run, it still constitutes an impermissible benefit. It's still pay for play at the end of the day, which is what they said they were trying to avoid. And until the NCAA makes an example of somebody, that's going to continue. That's one of the things that I think that they'll talk about extensively is what's going to happen with NIL. And again, I told you we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about this, but Greg Sankey is kind of on the forefront when it comes to leadership of trying to kind of get our arms around this process and provide a level playing field. Now, the haves are always going to have, and have-nots are always going to have not. So in many respects, that hadn't changed anything. It's not like you've got, BYU all of a sudden putting together this great war chest, and then they're buying recruits out from under Alabama, LSU, and USC and programs of that stature. I think if that begins to happen, you're going to see a lot of people get behind NIL legislation. Right now, people are like, hey, well, we've always bought players. Now we can just do it legally. I think there are a lot of people out there that were more than willing to get out there and write a check or drop off a bag of cash to have somebody get this stuff handled. Now you provided a vehicle for them to legally do it. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe. It was already happening. Now you just got a way to do it and avoid prosecution. But I think at the end of the day, when you look at what amateurism is at its heart, that's probably the wrong course of action. But let's not kid ourselves. These young people are a brand. Many of these star athletes, of course, there are a lot of people making a lot of money based on their name, image, and likeness. Do they deserve to profit from that? Yes, they do. I just have a problem with like the Jaden Rashada deal where this high school kid is enticed to sign with a school because he's promised millions of dollars. That's not what we want. I think one could make an argument too. And again, we talk about the Vandy need-based aid deal, right? And basically LSU has taken that same approach when it's come to NIL. And what do they have to show for it? A women's basketball NAFL championship and now a baseball NAFL championship on two teams that were largely built through the transfer portal with NIL incentives attached to it. Now, LSU was going to be a really good baseball team anyway. But what do they look like this year without Paul Skeens? What do they look like without Tommy White and Thatcher Hurd? Well, they're probably a regional team that probably doesn't make it to Omaha. And so I think the thing you got to ask yourself, is this what we want? Now, I'm not being critical of LSU. The rules are in place. They just did a better job of utilizing the format that was available. But I think Greg Sankey has to kind of ask himself, how much does this really matter? Is this what we want in college athletics? And if so, then I think he needs to help provide legislation to make the SEC more competitive in the NIL space. Within the framework of the rules, then let's all work together. Let's just don't let it be one or two schools. Let's work together as a group because we all benefit. That's not to say that we need the SEC to get involved in the NIL business, but I think you could do some things to be creative to help share the wealth a little bit. I think that's part of it. What if the SEC came out and said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to allow part of the TV money to help fund NIL. And NCAA, if you want to stop us, come on at us. Because we're the conference. And we're going to bring change. Because what we have now, again, where funds are being produced by fans, they're funding the NIL initiative. That's not sustainable. Now, there are a lot of people out there that have a business and they'll just write a check and they can, write this off. Of course, it's no longer tax deductible. It never was. The IRS has now clarified that. But I think that you're going to hear a lot of discussion from Greg Sankey about that. Now, moving on to, let's talk about the All-SEC list. Does Will Rogers make an All-SEC list with the media or the coaches? I suspect he does. Because there's so many in the SEC media that are going to base all this off statistics. And there'll be some people out there that'll say, hey, well, Will Rogers was a system quarterback, and now the system has changed, so he's not going to be as prolific, even though he is the most prolific passer returning in the Southeastern Conference. There will be some people out there that say, nah, I'm not giving it to Will. Even though there's, a handful of schools that are going to have brand new quarterbacks, and there's some other schools out there that are going to kind of figure it out in fall camp. I mean, you know who your incumbent starter is at Mississippi State. So there's a name recognition piece to go along with that. But I think there will be some people in the media that will be reluctant to vote for him because they're going to expect a dip in production because we're going to be more balanced offensively. But I still think Will Rogers ends up being probably your second team quarterback. I don't know who I would say would be number one. Maybe KJ Jefferson. Maybe you could make that case for him. Basically, whoever is at Alabama, it doesn't matter if they've done anything or not, they're going to get a bunch of votes.
I mean, just because there's so many Alabama people attend media days, many of them asking for Nick Saban's autograph and a picture for the Instagram account. But there's a lot of that. And Joe Milton at Tennessee is a guy that may get some votes as well. But I do think Will gets enough to at least be the second-team quarterback. Because I think a lot of people just look at numbers of returning players and say, you know what, hey, that's gaudy numbers. We'll go with Will. But I won't be surprised if he is relegated to second team. Now, Buki Watson and Jett Johnson both were among the top returning tacklers in the Southeastern Conference last year when we went to media days. And neither of them got many votes. Now, they returned this year as the top 2 tacklers in the entire Southeastern Conference. So again, for the stat counters, that should be an easy pick. But who's going to say, hey, I can't put 2 Mississippi State linebackers on my list. I think Buki makes first team and Jett probably makes second team. And maybe that's fair. But both of them deserve to be on the All-SEC preseason list for whatever that means. But if we're going to put it together, let's do some research here and let's vote accordingly. So I think both of those guys make it. Outside of that, I think it's a long shot for anybody else. I think Jaden Crumedy probably is talented enough to make the list, but because he had an abbreviated season due to injury, there are a lot of people that don't follow the rest of the league that he won't even be on their radar. Is he good enough to be an All-SEC second teamer, or maybe even a first teamer? Possibly. But I think there'll be a lot of people that'll say, you know what, I don't even know who this guy is. And yes, he's in the mock drafts, and a lot of people expect him to be a mid-round pick, but, you know, this guy was a 5-star out of high school, so he's got to be All-SEC. Let me remind you, too, Jaden Crumedy was 4-star, but nobody will do that kind of research. The schedule format is another thing that I'm sure they'll waste a lot of time talking about. You know, there were so many people over the course of the last several months that were just, referencing sources that essentially did not exist. Some guy texted them or whatever. Oh, we're going to go to 9 games. And there was all this discussion about that. Now, talking to people within the conference, they were like, hey, this doesn't benefit the SEC. A lot of people in national college football media is like, oh, the SEC should do this. But there are other people who are like, you know what? What do we gain from doing this? It makes it more difficult for us to get to the playoffs. For years and years and years, we shamed other conferences because they didn't have a conference title game. Well, then everybody else kind of got on board. And eventually the SEC may do it as well. And the issue is, we're doing the Power 5 mandate. So it's not like we're playing, Pearl River Community College and then, throw in Wesley College on top of it. And so the benefit comes, I guess, really, you get these rare matchups that I think actually give the conference more exposure. Like us playing Arizona and us playing Arizona State. Those are matchups that you never see. If we played the same 13 teams on a rotation every single year, does that help expand the SEC footprint? I suggest to you it doesn't. And in many cases, playing Arizona or Arizona State is probably more difficult than playing Vanderbilt or Missouri. And so it's not the conference issue that bothers me. It's not the level of competition. What bothers me is the fact that we already have the Power 5 mandate in place when other conferences don't. So our strength of schedule actually is pretty good. But if we make that a conference game, then that's 8 more losses that'll be divided among the SEC teams. And if you have a fringe playoff bubble team, aren't you better off having everybody play that extra non-conference game and give you a chance to pick up 2 wins instead of splitting it? That makes better sense to me. The math works in favor of the SEC to just keep the Power 5 mandate in place in an 8-game schedule. Now, that's not going to stop anybody from asking, because they won't do the research and look at it through that lens. They'll just say, oh, well, everybody else is playing non-conference games. You guys should too. And that would be exactly my response from Greg Sankey. Well, how many of them are mandating that their schools play another Power 5 opponent on an annual basis? Because that's the game that disappears. It's not the game against Southeastern Louisiana that goes away. It's the game against Arizona. And so you drop Arizona and you pick up Vanderbilt. Do you think more people are going to come watch us play Arizona or Vanderbilt? I would submit to you they're coming to watch us play Arizona because of the novelty of it. To me, it makes better sense. There is no good case to go to a 9-game schedule. And I was glad the measure was voted down. I think they actually tabled it. I don't know if it actually came to a vote, but there was a lot of discussion. They did not have the votes to go to a 9-game schedule. And again, the argument from all the 9-game schedule proponents is, well, I just get tired of seeing Alabama play Samford. Well, Alabama's still going to play Samford with a 9-game schedule. They're just not going to play Notre Dame. They're not going to play USC. They're not going to play Miami, Texas A&M. Not going to play Oklahoma State. They're still going to play Tulsa, but not going to play Oklahoma State. And so you don't really gain anything from a prestige standpoint or a strength of schedule standpoint. All you gain is an impediment to get to the expanded playoff, and you gain 8 more losses as a league. Again, there is no good argument for it, and I will not be convinced otherwise. So where should State be picked? That's a real question too. Now, I'm sure it's going to be 6th or 7th. There'll be some people that'll pick Auburn 7th. I'm sure the Ole Miss media will all pick Auburn 2nd behind Ole Miss, out of their love and allegiance to their former leader, who many of them still claim some allegiance to, in Hugh Freeze. I think Auburn's going to be better than people anticipate, but I do think Auburn is probably 7th. Now, if I was voting, and I'm not because I don't participate in this tomfoolery, I'd have Arkansas 6th. And I think the winner of the Arkansas-Auburn game will be 6th. I think that's fair. I think Auburn is going to surprise some people because of the fact that, no matter what you think about Hugh Freeze, do they have the horses to really compete with the upper echelon teams in this league? They do not. They're a little bit talent deficient. They tried to address that some in the portal. And I think by the time you get to middle of the year, I think Auburn's going to be a much more difficult out. But I think the loser of the Auburn-Arkansas game is last in the league. And I think Sam Pittman, as I've shared recently, I think Sam Pittman is a guy that might wind up on the hot seat this year. Fair or unfair, Arkansas people are not very patient. And there's some people in the Arkansas media that think they should be Alabama, because of Walmart and Tyson Foods. The reality of it is Arkansas doesn't have a great natural recruiting footprint. The state of Arkansas doesn't produce a lot of Power 5 players. For whatever reason, they don't. And in the years that they do have a ton of those guys, Texas, Oklahoma, they all give a lot of competition to Arkansas. It's not always a default like it is at LSU. There are a lot of people that grow up Razorback fans that are willing to leave the state because Arkansas has kind of been middle of the road in the SEC. And I think Sam Pittman is a guy that needs to produce this year, and I think it's going to be tough. 2 brand new coordinators. I love the running game, right? And we had this discussion on Gene's page yesterday, like Dan Enos is back at Arkansas. And people are like, Dan Enos. Well, I'll be honest with you. I like Dan Enos. I like what he did when he was at Arkansas with Belima. Now, they don't have a Hunter Henry this year, but they do employ a lot of 3 tight end sets. And that 3rd tight end is kind of a jumbo X or just kind of a beefier receiver, a guy that didn't have the foot speed to play receiver. So they bunch those guys out there, which gives them more mass in a running game that's going to feature one of the best running backs in the conference in Rocket and the top rushing quarterback in the conference in KJ Jefferson. I think they're going to be pretty good offensively. The question is going to be defense. And if KJ Jefferson gets hurt, the season's over. It just is. But I think they're, again, they struggled to get to bowl eligible last year, and a lot of that had to do with KJ being hurt. I think that's the case this year too. But I also could see a situation, because there is so much parity in the league, where everybody in the West is bowl eligible. You win your non-conference games, pick up a couple dubs out there, next thing you know, you got holiday plans. Then it becomes, hey, what's next, right? Are you buying the A&M hype? I'm not. People forget how bad A&M was last year. And a lot of people blame, well, it's just Jimbo's offensive play call, and he's become so antiquated. So we go out and get Bobby Petrino, who has done a good job, but how much autonomy is he going to have? What's going to happen when they struggle a little bit? Let's say they lose, a game to Alabama. Does Fisher start taking over the headset and say, no, that's what we're calling Bobby. That's what we're doing. I'm the boss. I mean, it's Jimbo's job on the line. Because you and I both know if Jimbo and them turn in another bad year, he's done. I think they're going to be an average team. And I think they're fifth. I know some other people are like, oh, they're going to be top 25. I don't see it. Now, could they win some games they're not expected to? Certainly. Then you get in there with a State and Ole Miss thing. I think Ole Miss offensively should be good. They got Judkins. Jackson Dart, of course, is a guy that proved to be a better athlete than I think many of us expected. You lose your wide receivers, and you're like, well, we went in the portal. That's true too, but you lose a couple of guys that have some SEC experience under their belt. And a guy like Mingo, who's been hurt much of his career, finally gets healthy and has a career year last year. Now a second-round selection by the Carolina Panthers. But again, defensively, what's Ole Miss going to look like defensively? That was the thing last year, too. When you saw what Zach Arnett did to that Ole Miss offense, if we just play decent on offense, that game's a blowout. And you know that I'm right? Will Rogers did not have a great game. He had a couple of big moments, but he didn't have a great game. The fumble with the one, if we score there, and it's what's crazy, right before it happened, I turned to my son and I said, if Will Rogers pulls it here, he'll walk in the end zone. And he pulled it, and give Ole Miss credit, they blew it up, and Will fumbled the football. But that's probably a 3-score game if we just get a better game out of the quarterback. That's just kind of for what it is. And, again, I think Ole Miss is missing some pieces. Judkins, I think, will be a stud. But I think they're going to be rather one-dimensional. So I'm going to pick State third and Ole Miss fourth. And you could make a case whoever wins between A&M and Ole Miss is probably the fourth best team. I think State's third, behind LSU and then behind Alabama. Call me a homer if you want to. I think State's in for a good year this year. And I think that South Carolina game will shape the season. Again, I look at, around this league and you begin to think about it. Auburn, brand new staff. Arkansas, same head coach, brand new coordinators. And a defense last year that really struggled. Look at A&M, a coach that's on the hot seat, and everybody knows it. Okay, so should State beat those three teams? I would submit to you they should. And we got to go over and play at the Plains, and that's never easy, even in the best of times. I mean, even we went over there in 15 and won. It wasn't a game that I think many people expected. I mean, they had a true freshman quarterback play, and we won that game 19-10. I mean, Gabe Miles had the big touchdown. Running up the hash there to kind of get us going, but it took us a while to get going, and that was Dak Prescott's senior year. It's tough to go win at Auburn, even though we've had some success there. But you look at those three and you say, you know what, we should win those three. And you get Ole Miss in Starkville this year. You should win that game. And then outside of that, you look at the non-conference. That's what's going to kind of you should win the 4 non-conference games, and then you've got road trips to South Carolina. That's a winnable game, but it's certainly not a gimme by any stretch of the imagination. And so you start stacking these wins up and you begin to think, okay, on paper, Mississippi State should have a better year than those 4 schools in the West. And you could make a case, too, that a lot of people would say, well, Ole Miss's schedule might be a little bit easier. Maybe. But 8 home games for State, we got to take full advantage of that. You have to. You got to be no worse than 6-2 at home. You have to. And then maybe you pick up a couple road wins out there. I mean, you got to go to College Station, where we've had some success. And by the time we get there, who knows what kind of shape that team's going to be in. You got to go to Auburn. You got to go to South Carolina. So it's interesting. It's an interesting dynamic. But that's not how it'll vote. Nobody outside of the Mississippi State media is going to pick State third. They're not, because people are going to buy into the hype. Well, A&M with Petrino, okay, they've got it all figured out. They've got talent. That A&M defense at times last year was really, really good. And offensively, they really, really weren't. And some of that had to do with Haynes King getting hurt. And Haynes, never really lived up to his potential. But I think that this is going to be an interesting year. And at the end of the day, the preseason rank means nothing. If anything, it's just kind of a motivating factor. And I think, many years when they don't pick Alabama or Georgia, it's always a surprise, right? Because people pick the chalk. And there are a lot of people out there that get these lists out there, and there are people that don't take the voting process seriously. They just kind of go with what they've read. I mean, and not to mention, last year we had somebody picking Vanderbilt to win the SEC. I mean, again, if you've ever needed a better example of how this process is viewed by many people in the SEC media, I don't know what it is, because that's it right there. The fact that somebody would pick Vanderbilt to win the SEC last year shows that people don't take this thing seriously. Now, the fans all hang on it, but you go ahead and prepare yourself. We're going to be picked 6th or 7th. Probably the best we could hope for is 5th. Now, I do think one of the things that helps is 247 Sports' Josh Pate, who is a guy that is a respected name in the streaming piece. Josh has been out there telling everybody, I think Mississippi State's getting slapped on. So I think we'll get some votes because of that. Not that we're going to be picked first, nor should we be. But I think a lot of people are going to say, you know what, Josh is probably right. This is a team that's going to return a lot of experience. And you say, well, they're changing the offense. Yeah, they're changing the offense to a more balanced scheme. So we're not going to be quite as gimmicky. And I don't mean that in any disrespectful way to Mike Leach or the air raid. But we're going to be more balanced, and we've got a veteran offensive line. You got Woody Marks, who, again, I think is a guy that is largely unheralded in this conference, who I think by the end of the year will be an absolute star. I mean, if Kenshawn Judkins played in the air raid, you wouldn't know his name as much either. But Ole Miss was a very run-heavy team last year, as they should have been. When you've got a guy like that, you've got a veteran offensive line, you've got a quarterback that's athletic enough to make plays, it makes sense. If Woody Marks played in that offense, we'd be talking about him, I suspect, in the same light. And I think that is one of those things that people don't look at. How this offensive scheme changes the dynamic of the Bulldog roster. Because you've had some players that have been underutilized. I mean, we've all argued for 2 years that Tulu Griffin was underutilized. He won't be in this scheme. We'll find a way to get creative to get into football. But will the average SEC voter know that? They won't. So whatever happens, because we'll be voted lower than we should be, remember it doesn't matter. I mean, these preseason lists, it's just something to talk about. And it's something we can reference later in the year and say, you know what, they got it wrong. They missed this and missed that. I mean, listen, is it a safe bet that Alabama and Georgia are going to be picked to win the West and the East? It absolutely is. And you say, oh, they got that right. Was it a safe bet to say that, hey, Vanderbilt or Missouri is going to be last in the East? Well, yeah, it's a safe bet. Oh, they got that right. You can say, well, they missed the middle of the pack, and that's what you'd expect. Well, yeah, but at the end of the day, none of this really matters. We're going to talk about it. We're going to address it. And, of course, when we come back next week after the media days are over and the voting is known, it'll be next Friday, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about where we're picked. And it'll be 6th probably, 5th or 6th. I think Auburn will be 7. And I think that's probably a little bit undervaluing them because they're going to upset. They're going to ruin somebody's season. There's going to be somebody out there that's maybe going to a New Year's Six or, one of the top 6 bowl games in the SEC that'll take Auburn for granted, and Auburn will get them. But give Freeze some credit. Despite his personal failings, he always managed to find a way to win a game perhaps they shouldn't. They also found a way to lose one they shouldn't too. People forget that they beat Alabama and lost to Memphis in the same year. Nobody ever talks about that, though. Oh, they beat Alabama. They lost to Memphis. Remember that? There's always some ebb and flow with it. People remember one game. They don't look at the totality of a season. They just remember the highlights. And I think it's important to understand, I got to have the counterbalance there, too. But the reality of it is that SEC Media Days will come, and everybody will get there and they'll talk, and then the next thing you know, they'll vote, and everybody will go home, and nobody's going to break any news unless it's Greg Sankey. The coaches are going to go up there. They've been prepared by their media relations people and say, hey, they're going to ask you about this. This is our message. They're going to ask you about this. This is what we talk about. They're going to be prepped for all that stuff. And they're going to have some planted questions. The whole thing, in many respects, is a dog and pony show. There'll be some national media people there that'll try to shake things up. And they'll ask some questions, perhaps, that irritate people. But, I think a lot of this with Greg Sankey, I think Greg can walk out of there without any prep at all and be able to handle it. He recently signed a contract extension now that takes him through 2025, and that's good. I think Greg Sankey is a great leader. I think he is a guy, too, that's not just good for the SEC, but good for all the college sports. And I'm happy that we have him. But if there's going to be any news broken, it's going to be on day one when Sankey gets up and kind of gives the State of the Union. And he's going to challenge some people. My hope is that he talks again about, these making more of the college sports, head counter sports. And again, kind of getting our arms around this NIL thing. It's madness. It absolutely is madness right now. And kind of changing the gears a little bit, but also on the NIL piece a little bit, is college baseball. I mean, the fact that here we are, the college game by and large has never really been what we see in football and basketball. And football and basketball, of course, are full scholarship sports. So baseball was essentially a pay-to-play type deal. Like you get a partial scholarship and your parents had to pay. And there were people out there that maybe couldn't afford, hey, you offer them 33%, they're going to need 50, you can't afford to give it to them, they can't afford to come here. It wasn't always about, hey, this school was better for me. It boiled down to money. There have been times in the past that we were able to get a player out of the state of Alabama because, number one, it's cheaper to go to school here than it is Alabama or Auburn, but we were able to offer a bigger scholarship package. And so it was less out-of-pocket money for the parents. So we get them because of money, not because we gave them an impermissible benefit, but because it was a matter of economics. And so by and large, that's kind of what we dealt with. But now, like with this baseball transfer portal stuff, you've got guys out there that are getting these NIL deals as part of their recruiting package. And I have been told by people in the know that there are some head coaches within our conference, when they sit down, it's not about development or here's our plan for you. They say, hey, listen, we want you to be here. What is it going to take for us to get you here? What are you being offered? Is that what we want in college sports? You know, maybe you do. I don't know that I do. But now this NIL thing has gotten into baseball. It's gotten into women's basketball, which is also a full scholarship sport. So you've got a lot of athletes that are already going to graduate debt-free from college, and now we're just kind of piling on top of that. And so I think one of the things you can do to combat some of this in college baseball is let's find a way to fully fund baseball. Just like we did with the volunteer assistant that's now a paid position. For the teams that want to fully fund baseball, they should be allowed to do it. You know, we don't have a hockey team. We've got a little rec team. You know what I'm saying? We've got an intramural team. We don't have a varsity team. So why should I get a vote as a university on what the scholarship situation is at South Dakota State for ice hockey? Do I care if they fully fund hockey? No. So why should they get a vote because we play baseball and they don't really care about it? I mean, the Fighting Sioux has been a national power in ice hockey. Did you know that? And so I think there's some things that we have to change, and I hope that Greg Sankey can be a lightning rod for change, that if South Dakota State wants to fully fund ice hockey, they should be allowed to do that. You know, we're not going to play hockey, so it's not going to impact us. You know, Monmouth, do they care about college baseball? No, but they get a vote just like we do. Why should they get a vote? If they want to fully fund lacrosse, that's their business. We're not going to. And that's where I think the rub has come in, is everybody's like, well, there's not enough support nationally to support this. I think what you do is give everybody an NCAA. So you know what? Hey, you can pick one partial scholarship sport, and maybe that's your niche sport. Maybe that's what you want to do, and you can fully fund that. You can. I mean, we don't have a level playing field now in college athletics because a lot of these student athletes are going to the highest bidder, and now it's all legal. So let's let the Fighting Sioux fully fund ice hockey, and you let Mississippi State fully fund baseball. Because if we're gonna make the financial commitment as a fan base and as a university, I think we should be rewarded. And again, I don't think we should get a say in what happens with gymnastics or with swimming or diving because we don't field those teams. But right now, we get a vote. So why not make everybody happy? Like LSU has a tremendous gymnastics program. And if you've ever seen that on television, maybe your daughter is involved in gymnastics and they watch collegiate gymnastics, it's an incredible atmosphere. So if we want to really do what's best for college athletics as a whole and not just for what we love, let's do a carte blanche policy. Everybody. So if LSU says, you know what, we make a ton of money on gymnastics, we want to commit more of our scholarship dollars to gymnastics, they should be able to do that. Alabama has a gymnastics team. Florida, Oklahoma have been national powers in softball. That's also a partial scholarship sport. If they decide, you know what, hey, we want to be a softball school, then let's allow them to do that. And then the argument would be is like, well, it's not fair because they're a full scholarship school and we're not. But that's your decision. Let's empower you to make your own decision about your athletics department. You can't make every sport fully funded. I get that. Even though people talk about this all the time. And people always argue about it. It's really not a lot of money. But Steve, it is. It's really not. You know, those student athletes are already here. They're going to classes that are already taking place. Those papers are still getting graded. Those professors are still getting paid. It's just now all of a sudden, you know, you're going to get less money from their families. So, you know, at the end of the day, there's not a ton of expense. That's what you lose is the differential between the student loans, the Pell Grants, and the out-of-pocket expense from the parents. That's what you're losing financially. And when you begin to put that number together, it's a drop in the bucket compared to the money that many schools are making on their student athletes. And I understand that that college athletics is not really a for-profit business, but you look at the NCAA tournament, that certainly makes a ton of money. That TV package is tremendous. And so I've had this discussion with you all before, and I'm very, 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 very passionate about this. As a guy that had a kid that played college baseball, I can tell you that there is not equity in college athletic scholarships, and there should be. There should be. And again, you can't fully fund everything, but if you let everybody pick a sport, you pick one sport, outside of, hey, you're mandated to do this as part of the conference, you got to have X number of scholarships, and you can comply with Title IX, however you do it, but we're going to give you an opportunity here to fully fund another sport. To me, that makes perfect sense. To other people that won't, they'll poke holes in it, they'll find a reason not to do it. But we should have the ability to do that. And you know what? If you want to package it together and say, you know what, South Dakota State, we're going to fully fund women's hockey and men's hockey. And Mississippi State, if you want to fully fund baseball and softball, you can do that. I think you can get that done and still have Title IX compliance. That's just me. I don't know why more people aren't championing that cause. And part of it is because those are niche sports that nobody really cares about. Because why do we care? You know, what happens with, with curling, right? You know, are we going to get out, all of a sudden, oh, okay, well, we're going to fully fund that, so let's go put a curling team on the field. We're not going to do that. Even though I can tell you we got some, small town kids from Manatee or someplace like that could probably get the job done. But you understand my point. And so, again, I think it'll be another one of those media days where not a lot happens, and they'll pick us lower than they should, and many of our players won't get respected as they should. And that's part of the deal. Hopefully it'll be a motivating factor. I believe in this team. I believe in Zach Arnett and this coaching staff. I think we're going to have a great football year, and I hope you do too. Yeah, done so. Go to Dogpile the Book. I guess now you can go to whenthebottomfalls.com, and you can buy the new book. It's pre-ordered on now. It'll be released in about 2 months. But you go ahead and get in line. Pre-sales have been really strong. Thank you very much for that. But while you're there, you can get Dogpile. You can get Alpha Dogs and Flim Flam. And also, too, we've got a turkey book on there. I didn't write it, but it was with my publisher, wrote it, and sadly he passed away. So if you've got turkey hunters in your family, you can also go to my website and buy the turkey book. How about that? And if you're not a member of genespage.com, what are you doing with your life? Come over there and join us. It's going to be great. We're going to give you unprecedented coverage of Mississippi State football this year. That's our goal to you, and it's our mandate to ourselves. But until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.